All right. LDWMMAC, okay? I want you, these are my afterthoughts on Sara Mcmann being signed by Bellator. Now, folks, we know that Bellator has a history of signing fighters that are no longer productive in the UFC. When a fighter gets cut by the UFC, it's not the end of their career because there are opportunities at Bellator, okay? Bellator is a safe haven for fighters over 40. And Bellator will take those fighters. And they will put those fighters in very, very entertaining matchups. But the longevity of these fighters in Bellator is very, very low. Okay, these fighters, they'll last another couple of years in the sport. And after that, they will be ceremoniously exited out of Bellator. Sara Mcmann is another fighter over 40 that's being signed by Bellator. Okay? Sara Mcmann has some very good years in the UFC. However, toward the late ends of her career within the UFC, Sara Mcmann was stopped by Marin Regnault. She was stopped by Talita Bernardo. And she was beat up by Juliana Pena. Okay, these were really, really three devastating losses in Sara Mcmann's career. And Sara Mcmann began to be that person. Phenomenal wrestler. But that was it. Sara Mcmann came into the UFC in the era where it was okay to be one-dimensional and win. It was okay to be one-dimensional. Okay? Sara Mcmann is a wrestler. That's what she does. That's who she is. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Sara Mcmann, for all intents and purposes, did a great job in the UFC. But as the fight game evolved, as it evolved, Sara Mcmann got left behind. You never really saw Sara Mcmann do a lot of striking. Okay? You just didn't see it. Sara Mcmann would wait for an opportunity to take you down. That was Sara McMahon's game plan. And it worked most of the time. I mean, good grief, God dolly. That game plan was successful 90% of the time. But when Sara Mcmann dealt with people who could actually grapple, who could wrestle, who had jiu-jitsu, Sara Mcmann was at a disadvantage. She lost very quickly to Ronda Rousey. Marin Regnault submitted her. Talita Bernardo submitted her. Okay? Or I want to say Marin Regnault almost knocked her out. Juliana Pena just mauled her. Like, it was a point that Sara McMann got left behind. So now Sara's going over to Bellator. Okay? It's a good move. Less pay. But she still gets to fight. She still gets to do what she loves. I don't know if Sara McMann loves fighting. I don't know. Okay? I can sit and tell you I don't know that she really does love to fight. But she loves to wrestle. And unfortunately, for Sara McMann in women's wrestling, it's just not a very viable avenue for a source of income. It's not going to happen. Okay? It's not a viable source of income. And Bellator is a graveyard for fighters that are one-dimensional. She ought to do well. I mean, Sara McMann will fight as a featherweight. Okay? She'll get to keep a lot of her muscle mass and she'll be strong. But will Sara McMann do what is necessary to become a complete fighter? She's over 40 now. Sara McMann has had over a decade to try to become a complete fighter. And still, it's not there. You got fighters like Juliana Pena that they're a little bit more well-rounded, are willing to take a dabble in the striking part of their offense. We saw Juliana Pena in the first fight with Amanda Nunes strike with Nunes. We saw her do it. Hell, we've seen Amanda Nunes evolve her game. We've seen fighters like Rose Namajunas become very efficient and adept in grappling. We've seen the major players in MMA that they have elected to evolve. And if you guys notice, that the fighters who were once dominant in MMA, that were one-dimensional, guess what? They're no longer here, or they're fading away. You have your Holly Holmes, great stand-up fighter. Wrestling has gotten somewhat better, but she spent so much time being one-dimensional. She's about out. Miesha Tate, on her way out. An extraordinary wrestler. That's about it. She's on her way out. Her last couple of fights were brutal. This is no longer a lane for one-dimensional fighters. And fighters like Sara McMann, they need to understand that. They need to understand that this is no longer a lane for one-dimensional fighters. The era of the one-dimensional fighter is over. I remember years ago we used to say, hey, if you can wrestle, you have a chance in an MMA fight. If you could wrestle, you have a chance. Okay, you have a chance to win a fight if you can wrestle. Now it's no longer like that, because now people are getting into the game and they're learning how to stop takedowns. They're learning how to stop these takedowns. But unfortunately for Sara McMann, she can stop a takedown. But Sara McMann, can she block a punch? Can Sara McMann throw a decent jab? Can Sara McMann throw a decent head kick, a teeth kick, calf kick? Guys, we've really not seen a lot of evidence of Sara McMann doing these things. She's been content with grappling and wrestling. To live by the sword is to also die by the sword. I wish Sara McMann luck in Bellator. I wish her luck. But she's going to go up against fighters, even at the Bellator level. Fighters that are well-rounded. And Sara McMann, she's going to have a tough time. She's going to have a very tough time in Bellator. But I guess she'll be there for as long as it lasts. Because nobody really wants to see Sara McMann take somebody down and just lay on top of them. Nobody wants to see that. The takedowns are going to be less. Her takedowns, a lot of them are going to get stopped. And Sara McMann is going to keep getting put away. Those are my thoughts. Tell me what you think in the comment section. I'm out.